Okay, this is the grammar video for Chapter 4, Section 1, regarding adjective endings. So the main idea, essentially, with adjective endings is that they need to reflect the gender and case of the noun that the adjective is describing. The exception is when the article preceding the noun already shows the gender and the case. But really the main idea is that the gender of the noun and the case of the noun in the sentence basically have to just be described by the adjective or the article, and if the article doesn't do that, that's why the adjective has to do that. So this diagram should help you remember things a little bit easier. It's pretty simplified compared to the actual adjective ending charts that we have in the classroom. There are a series of questions you need to ask, and then depending on the answer to that, that will determine what you do next. So the first question is there an article? And if there's not, then we go to the der word endings. If there is, then we go to the next question, is the article in the original form? If it's not, you apply a certain ending. If it is, then we need to move to the next question, which is the noun singular? Again, if it's not, you apply a certain ending. If it is, then we ask the question, does the article show the gender? If it doesn't, then we have two different endings we could apply, and if it does, there's another ending you could apply. So first we're going to take a look at the first question, is there an article? So these are unpreceded adjectives, which means there is no article before them. There is an example here, Ich mag warmen Kaffee. Now, this is probably the most complicated question we have in this diagram, just because you have to know the whole chart for the der word endings. What's easy about the der word endings is that they pretty much look like the der words. So if you have them memorized, it should be pretty simple. Now this is also the adjective ending chart that I think represents the idea that I presented earlier about the main idea for adjective endings pretty clearly. Because if we look at the chart, you'll see that the ER, E, ES, E, EN, E, ES, E, and then EM, ER, EM, EN, and the ES, ER, ES, ER, all are very similar to the gender and obviously case, because the der words are very descriptive in that way. So in the example that I provided, our adjective is unpreceded, meaning there's no article before it. We have our subject, ich, our verb, mag, and then our adjective with its ending, so warm with the ending n, and then our noun that it's modifying. There is no article before that adjective. So any time that an adjective is unpreceded, that's when we will be probably the most specific as to the gender and case. The nice thing is, because this is probably the most complicated one, the nice thing is that this is possibly the least common example of an adjective use. We typically have articles or some sort of modifier before the adjective. Our next question is the article in the original form. This one we're going to call the unoriginal form. And if we look at the examples here, ich gebe der schönen Frau eine Blume. To explain the unoriginal form, we need to think of first our noun that the adjective is describing. So in the first sentence, Frau is the noun that's being described by the adjective schön. And that means that if we were thinking of the definite article for a feminine noun, the original form would be die. And in this sentence, the article that is used for a feminine noun is der. So it is not an original form of the definite article for a feminine noun. That means we're using en as the ending. So ich gebe der schönen Frau eine Blume would be correct. Number 2, hast du den alten Stuhl? Stuhl is a masculine noun. So if we're thinking of the definite article, that would be in the original form der. Den is not the original form, so therefore we add the en. In the third sentence, wir helfen einem jungen Mann. Mann, again, is a masculine noun. If we look at our adjective, jung, it is preceded by an indefinite article, and the original form of the indefinite article for a masculine noun would be ein. So this again is not an original form. And because of that, we're adding en. Another way to think of this would be if we consider dative case and the genitive case, they're always going to be en because none of them are in the original form. Sometimes we have, like in the second example sentence, the accusative case with the masculine. That one does change. So that's another example of a masculine noun or masculine form, but in the accusative case where we're adding the en. Obviously, you should know that the feminine and neuter forms do not change. All right, moving on to our third question. Is the noun singular? This is what we're going to call the plural form because we're answering that question with a no. So if we look at the first sentence, the noun is Vögel, and Vögel is plural. And if a noun is plural, all we have to do is add en. Now, you have to consider, going back here, we've already answered the question, is there an article with yes? So there is an article. Is there an article in the original form? And we're again answering in yes. And by that point, now we're saying, okay, is it singular? So we've already answered yes to the first two questions. So what you need to understand is that we already know there's an article. It's in the original form, but it's plural. All right, and in that case, we say no. Then we add en. So die roten Vögel fliegen. All right, so it is plural. It has an article, and it's in the original form. Ich sehe die bunten Hosen. Again, same concept. And then sucht ihr die neuen Zeitungen? Same concept here. I think this is probably the most straightforward one. It's plural, there's an article, and it's in the original form. So we're adding that en. Now the same would apply to indefinite articles. The only problem is that we don't have an indefinite article for that. But if you use possessives, possessives are considered the same type of word in some ways as an indefinite article. So they work the same way. And we would do the same thing. So if we said meine instead of die in the first sentence, it would be meine roten Vögel fliegen. All right, so we can use possessives as well. Doesn't just have to be the definite articles. Okay, so on our fourth and final question, again, keeping in mind that we've already said yes to, is there an article, is it in the original form, and is the noun singular? We're asking now, does it show the gender? And we're going to first answer that with no. So these are called gender non-descriptive forms because they don't describe gender. So if we look at our first example sentence here, it says, ein gesunder Salat schmeckt mir nicht. And ein, paired with the masculine noun, Salat, ein does not clearly show that it's masculine because ein is also a neuter form of the indefinite article. So that is non-descriptive of gender. And that means that our adjective is going to have to show us the gender. So when we use it, it's either going to be ER or ES. And it's pretty easy to tell which one's which because ER applies to masculine, ES applies to neuter. And those are the only two cases where this happens. So it's either going to be a masculine or neuter noun, and the article will have to not show gender, and that's when we apply ER or ES. So that's why it's ein gesunder Salat schmeckt mir nicht. However, in the second sentence, hast du ein gutes Buch für mich? Buch is neuter, so we're applying the ES ending. And in the last one, we have an example of a possessive, which, like I said before, indefinite articles and possessives work in very similar ways. So we have dein junger Bruder ist dumm. All right, so we're applying an ER ending because Bruder is masculine. And in the same final question, but this time answering with yes again, does the article show gender? This time we are saying yes, as well as the three previous questions we've already answered yes to. So does the article show gender? Yes, der große Eisbecher ist leer. Der is very descriptive of gender when we're talking about a masculine noun. So therefore we're only adding E. Like I said before at the very beginning, these adjective endings really are functioning as a descriptor of the noun they're applying to. So they have to match the case and they have to match the gender. If our article, and if there is an article, if that article is showing the gender and the case, which der does, we really don't need to do much else. We still have to add an ending because it precedes a noun, but we just add an E. So it's less descriptive of an adjective ending than some of the others we've seen, like the ER, ES, and so on. So der große Eisbecher ist leer. Die schwarze Kuh frisst. And ich sehe das spielende Kind. Alright, so each time, der, die, das, they are all very descriptive of the genders. Die with a feminine noun makes sense. It tells us it's feminine. And das with a neuter noun, again, it's very descriptive. It tells us that it's neuter. So we're only applying that E. So now that we've gone through and taken a look at all of the questions, I want to review the diagram one more time. So when we ask the question, is there an article, you can either go one of two ways. If you say no, then you have to apply the der word endings. If you say yes, then you're asking another question. So is there an article? Yes. Then is that article in the original form? And again, if the answer is no, we go to en ending. It's pretty automatic. If there is, then we have to ask another question. Is the noun singular? No, add an en. Yes, it is singular. Then does that article show the gender? And if that is no, then we only have two endings to apply, er or es, depending on if it's masculine or neuter. And then if it's yes, we're only applying e. So the trickiest part to all of this is memorizing the chart, the diagram. But it is a lot easier than memorizing every single adjective ending for each of the 4 charts that do exist. There are some exceptions to these rules, but they're less common and they're things that we will go over in a future video. Please keep in mind that these will apply to ordinal numbers when you use ordinal numbers in this chapter. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. And remember to practice your adjective endings using the activities given to you on Conjugamos.